Hey guys, welcome to part 6 of the Minecraft mod tutorial. This week is going to be the delayed custom chest tutorial, well the start of it anyway. This is probably going to be spread over 2 tutorials because there is quite a lot of code here. A lot of them I think I'm going to get done in the space of one kind of regular size video. But I'm going to, with the block and stuff, I'm going to skip out parts so that it's not so long, because there's things that you've seen already that I don't have to go over again. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to show you is my texture for the block, the GUI. So I'm going to use the default container one. You can find this if you go into your Minecraft.jar and go into your GUI folder. You can find this. This is just called, I think it's called container in the folder. I'm going to use this just because for this tutorial I'm going to make a chest that it takes up the space of a single chest, but has the contents of a double chest, shall we say. So I'm going to keep this open because in the course of this video, and also especially in the next video, we're going to have to come back to this and look at this. If you're going to make your own, you could start with this one and manipulate it by, dragging and dropping stuff. You can do that, but I definitely would make sure to make it easier, just put the start of the picture at the top left hand side of the screen. Then it's easy to work out your dimensions and stuff. So we'll have to come back to this. I've also got a texture for a block which looks kind of like a box, I think. So I'm not very good with textures, so I'll just keep that there. Okay, so let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a block. And this block is going to be, I'm going to call it a, what should we call it? Large chest. Is that a block already? I hope not. Something's going on there. Okay. I'm going to call it, I'll call it custom chest because there won't be anything there. So I'm going to call it, let's call it block custom chest. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the things you'd normally associate with a block, and I'll come back when I'm finished, because we've already seen this. Okay, so now I have my custom block chest here. The only thing that's different from a normal block is instead of extending the block class, we're now extending block container, and this will force you to add this in. So it's a function that will return a tile entity. We don't have a tile entity just now, so we're just going to leave it null until we deal with that. We're not going to deal with that in this episode because that's quite a big part of it. So I've called my thing large chest when I made the text earlier on, so I've just put it there like normal, register icons. Made it out of wood since it's a chest, and localized name, and I've put it in our new tab that we made last time. Okay, so the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to tell Minecraft to open our chosen GUI when we right click the block. So there's a method called onBlockActivated, and that's the block you use for it. So I'm just going to put it in between here. So it returns a boolean, I guess to tell you if it actually did anything or not. onBlockActivated. This takes quite a lot of parameters. It takes a world. It then takes int x, int y, and int z for the position. It then takes the player. So it's an entity player. I'm going to have to import that in a wee minute. It then takes an int value that's the metadata of the block, and that's just some small data about it, but the tile entity is just a way to store more data than this metadata, so I'm not going to use it, but I'll just put it in. And then there's three float values at the end, and I have no idea what they do. I've never seen them being used, so I just call them A, B, and C, and we're not going to use them here. They're just there to show their face, really. Entity player. Okay, what's going on here? Yeah, we need to return something. Okay, we'll do that in a wee minute. Okay, so I know we said we're not going to get into the tile entity stuff just now, but some of these things need a basic tile entity just now. And also there'll be stuff that will bring up errors because we don't have the classes for them yet. I'm just going to add them in, and it'll fix the error later on when we actually create these things. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get the tile entity of the block. This isn't created yet, but it will be. So we need to call it a tile entity. I'm just going to call it TE. And we get world. This is a world object, and you want to get block tile entity there. And the three parameters are the position X, Y, and Z. So it takes the X, Y, and Z of the block and gets the block tile entity that represents that block. Okay. Now we need to check if the tile entity is null, because if it is, then we're in trouble. Tile entity is null. We don't want to open the chest because it will error. Also, you don't want to open the chest, as with vanilla Minecraft, if the player's sneaking. So you can say player dot, and it'll come up eventually. But I'm just going to put is sneaking. So that means if the player has the controller shift key, held down, it won't open the chest, because that's the kind of default nature of a chest. Okay, so if that happens, that's not meant to be a semicolon, that's meant to be an open brace. So inside here, we just want to return false, because we have not managed to do anything with that. If it comes out of here, then we want to open the GUI. So player has a method called open GUI, and you'll see that's what it takes. So it takes the mod. So we're going to go to our test mod. Is it test? No, it's not test mod, it's tutorial mod. And then we're going to grab that instance thing. Remember the instance that we created, and it was just sitting there. This ID, as far as I'm aware, it isn't used anymore, because it was used with mod loader to register the containers. I'm going to put 0. If you make another one, make sure to change the other one to something other than 0. So if you've got 2, make sure the IDs are different, just in case it still matters, but I can't see anything anywhere that uses that value. And it takes the world, an X, a Y, and a Z. The only thing we've got left to do, because we need to return something, is tell it that we've done it properly. Return true. On block activated. So that says, hey, if you right click this block, I'm going to open the GUI for you. Okay, we've got to deal with that, and we've also got to deal with what happens when you break the block, but we're going to come back to that later, because that's a little more in-depth code, and I'm going to go through the kind of beginner stuff in this tutorial and go on to the more advanced stuff to do with the custom chest in the next one. So I'll come back to that. So the next thing we need to deal with is the GUI class, and the GUI class is the one that defines the kind of background and foreground of your picture, so your GUI that pops up. So I need to go and I need to create a new class, and I'm going to call it GUI custom chest, just so that I don't get confused with any other classes I end up creating. Okay, so this class has to extend a class called GUI container. We're going to have to import that, and it's going to moan about something as usual. Yeah, constructor. We'll do that in a wee second. Okay, so we need to make a constructor, I guess. So it's public as usual, GUI custom chest. This constructor, you want it to take something called an inventory player, and that is the inventory of the player, so the one that they've got in the hotbar and their 3 rows. Also, you want to take your tile entity. Now, we're going to have to work out what our tile entity is going to be called. So I'm going to call it tile entity custom chest, and then I'm just going to call it TE just for short. So that tile entity custom chest there will error until we create the class, but that's not going to happen for a little minute. Well, a little while, because we don't have a class. Actually, I might end up making the classes just to stop the errors coming up, but for now we'll just leave it. Okay, so we've got an inventory player and a tile entity custom chest. So if you think about it, inventory player is the player's inventory, so the 3 rows and the hotbar. The tile entity is let's say the inventory of the chest. That's basically it. It's as simple as it gets, really. So in here we're going to have to call the super constructor, And now we need to put something else in that we don't have yet, and it's going to be the container. So I'm going to call it a container custom chest. And then we want to give it the inventory and the TE. Okay, that's also going to error because we don't have a container custom chest yet. Now, actually, I'm going to go and create these classes because it's slightly annoying me. So we want tile entity custom chest. Okay. And container custom chest. Okay, so that's still going to error because we don't have a constructor in there, so I'll deal with that error. Okay, so next thing we need to do inside this constructor is we need to define the global X and Y size of the picture. Now, if you don't change this, it will be the simple container thing, and that might be wrong, so it's better to specify them directly now. I'm going to go to this image, I'm going right up to the top, and we're just going to measure the size of this image here, as accurate as possible. So it's 176 and 222. So I'm going to quickly type those in before I forget. So 176 is the X, so the X size equals 176 and Y size equals 222. And that might look quite stupid because X size and Y size are nowhere to be seen, but inside GUI container there is X size and Y size that are defined, and you can change them in here for your own needs. So that's the size of your image. So I'm just going to put a little comment here saying size of GUI image. So that's you can change that depending on which size you have your image. Okay, so now that's us done for that. The next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to draw the background picture. Now, making a custom chest is quite tricky sometimes, because if you're just coming into it, you just understand the chest as a thing that pops up that you interact with. But of course that's not the case. The background picture is just a PNG file, and what goes in front of it is all the kind of container interface stuff. We're going to come on to that later. We're just going to do the background and the foreground of the actual picture here. So we need to go and we need to type in big long method name here. So it's a protected void method, and it's called draw GUI container background layer. And this method takes 3 parameters, all 3 of which I'm not going to use here. So it takes the first one, which is a float, the second one is an int, and the third one is also an int. So I'm just going to call them par1, par2 and par3. Okay, so inside this method we're wanting to get the texture of the GUI and show it. And this is the big problem with things in 1.6.2. As always, the textures are messed up, and it's not even the same as the block and item textures. It's a different way to do it. So what we need is a resource location, and I'm just going to call it image. And it's going to be a new resource location. Okay, inside this, I'll put the parameters in a little minute. There we go, resource location. Inside here, you want 2 strings. The first one is your mod ID. So mod ID is tutorial mod, if I remember right. It's been a long time since I've looked at that. Yep, tutorial mod. Where are we? Okay, so that's the mod ID, and this is the path. Now it's not just the file name, you actually have to put path. So it starts with textures, and then we're going to put it in GUI, and it's going to be custom chest.png. So to iterate that, to explain that, when you put your texture into your files here, you know how we've got your source Minecraft assets, then you've got your tutorial mod thingy, your ID, then your textures. Inside here with blocks and items, you can also have a folder called GUI, and this can contain all your GUI backgrounds and whatever else you've got. and that's the path for that there. So you start at the textures folder, so it's after your tutorial mod thing basically there. So if you were to put a slash in here, this would be the full path. Okay, so now we've got that. First, before we do anything, we want to reset the colour using OpenGL. So OpenGL might have been called earlier on in the file, it might have changed the colour to something, so what we want to do is we want to reset the colour. GL11 is your OpenGL object, and the GL colour American spelling 4F gives us the colour function. So each of these is going to want to be 1.0 to just reset the colour to just plain white. The first one's a red, the second one's green, third one is blue, so that's RGB colours, and the fourth one is the alpha, which means the transparency, and we want it to be opaque, so you want 1.0 in there as well. Now we're going to call a function that, in my opinion, that I think registers the image with the render engine. So it's FML client handler, and we want an instance of this client handler, and then we want to get the client from it. After that, you want to, there's a thing in here called render engine, there we are, and then there's a function called func underscore, and it's 110577 underscore a, and that is the function you want to use. I have no idea what 110577 underscore a is. I just know that that's the way to do it. It took quite a while to work out how to get that done. Now we need a start X and a start Y point for our drawing. So what we want to do is I'm going to call it X, and we want to take the width of the screen, and you want to take away the size of your picture, and then you want to divide it by 2. That takes you to kind of a nice point. So width is a globally defined thing in GUI container, and X size is what was set up in the constructor. You want to divide that by 2. Make sure to put width minus X size in brackets, otherwise it will do it in the wrong order, which will end up very badly. And the same with this, you want height minus Y size to get the height, and take away the Y size, divide it by 2 will give you a nice evenly centered image when we draw it. The only other thing we've got to do is we've got to do this dot draw textured model rect. First parameter is the X, so the starting position of X, and it's the starting position of Y. Then it is inside the image file, where does your image start? So that's 0, 0, so you'll have to change this if you don't put it in the top corner, like we did. And then X size and Y size go here. So that's the background for the GUI. Now what we want to do is we want to draw the foreground. So it's another protected void. So the foreground is going to be the text. And we're going to draw a GUI container, almost the same foreground layer. This takes 2 parameters, int par1 and int par2. I'm not going to use these as usual. Okay, so here you want to draw some strings, so there's a thing in here called font renderer, and that's in the GUI container, and that has a method called drawString. DrawString allows you to, I'm just going to delete these because I don't think that's the right number of arguments for what I'm wanting. Allows you to draw a string onto the front of the thing, the picture. So I'm going to call it a chest. The next one's the start X position of the text, so I'm going to bring it in a bit from the edge, maybe 8. Start Y position, I'm going to bring it down from the top, 6, just so that it's not, encroaching on the side of the picture. And then the last argument is a colour, and the colour, the default colour from Minecraft text in these things is this 4210752. This is actually what's called an MS Access colour, and it's just a kind of number representation of an RGB colour. I suggest that if you want to change this, don't just type in it in random. Go into Google and type in MS Access Colours, and the first website you'll come across is this, and you'll see here you've got all your hex, not your hex colours, you've got your hex colours, your RGB, and then you've got this, and that's what you want to put in there, whatever colour you want, and there's hundreds of them. So you can see where's ours, 421075 so that's the colour the text is going to be. So it's almost black, but not quite. Okay, so that's that one. Now we want one for the inventory. Now I'm going to show you a slightly different thing inside drawstring. So this time, say you wanted your text to be translated to the local language of whatever country the person is playing it from. This will work for anything that is globally defined in Minecraft, so anything like inventory will be okay. So if you want to type inventory, you want to go to stack collector, and inside there you can translate to local, and then the inventory one is called container.inventory. This will then either show you inventory in English, or will show you whatever inventory is in your local language, depending on where you are. Okay, then the X size again, I'm going to bring it in the same amount. This is going to sound a little bit stupid, this one, but I'm taking it straight from Minecraft. Y size minus 96 plus 2. That's the size. 94 is the size of the inventory at the bottom, and if you don't change the bit at the bottom, then 94 is the size you want to take off the Y size to put that to because that just makes it work. I guess 96 is the distance to the bottom of the tile entity stuff, and then plus 2 is to get it down a bit. You could put minus 94 if you want, but I'm just going to take it straight from the Minecraft code. And the last one is your colour again, and I'm going to use the same colour, 421075. Is that right? Yes. And that's your 2 strings in there. Okay. So that's us, got the background and we've got the foreground. There's going to be an error there until we actually create the container custom chest. The last thing I'm going to do in this episode, which is the last kind of basic thing, is I'm going to implement what's called a GUI handler, and this is going to it kind of tells Minecraft Forge what to do with the tile entity when it is on a client and when it is on a server. So we're going to create a new class here, one more new class, and I'm going to call it custom chest handler. Let's call it that. Okay, so this handler is going to implement an interface called iGUI handler. We need to import this. It is going to complain about methods not being added, but I will add them in a little second. So first we're going to go for the server side. So it's a public object method, and it's called get server GUI element. This takes an ID, it takes a few things, an entity, player. It also takes X, Y, and Z. Oh, sorry, world first. And then X, Y, and Z. Takes all those functions, all those arguments. We need to import entity, player as usual, and world. Come on. Okay. So first what we need to do in here is we need to get the tile entity yet again, like we did earlier on. So it's world.getBlockTileEntity. And then you give it X, Y, and Z because you want to give it the coordinates of the block, and then it'll get the tile entity for the block that you want. So we need to import tile entity because that's not imported yet. And then we need to check if it is an instance of our tile entity. So we need to check if instance of just checks if it's a member of that class. And then we want to give it our tile entity name, which was tile entity custom chest. That's going to error because tile entity custom chest isn't a tile entity, it's just a class, so we'll fix that when we come to make the tile entity. And if it is, then we want to return a new container. So it's the container class we want to return in this case. So it's container, oh, it's not container chest, container custom chest. And then you give it the player.inventory. So this is the vanilla Minecraft player inventory, and then you want to give it the tile entity. So, but it's not a tile, it's only a tile entity just now, and you want to give it the actual type of it that we want, and it's tile entity custom chest. So you need to cast it to tile entity custom chest. That's going to have a hell of a lot of errors at the moment because, yeah, we've not defined that. You can't define that yet. It's just going to error because we haven't created any of this stuff in the other class. But with everything like this, you just have to deal with errors until you actually create the things. Okay, and then if not, if this, you know, if this isn't a good thing to do, if there's not a tile entity custom chest there, we want to return null so that we don't get any crashes. And there we are. That's that one. The last one we've got is an object method again, which is almost the exact same, and it's called getClientGUI_element. And this is what happens when you're on a client. An ID, entity player, world, int x. You see a pattern here. Usually you take int x, int y, and z into any of these functions. Now we need to do the exact same thing. Tile entity te equals world dot get block tile entity, and then xyz. Oh, let's keep the nice format in here. X, Y, and Z. So we've got the title entity. Then you check yet again if te instance of tile entity custom chest. This time we're not going to return a new container because this is the client side. We're going to return a new GUI custom chest. So it's a GUI class here. And then you want to give this the same thing. You want to give it player.inventory, and then you want to give it casted to tile entity custom chest. RT here. And that will error there because you can't cast from that because it's not the same type, and that'll error because we haven't set the tile entity custom chest up as a tile entity yet. And yet again, like usual, if it doesn't work, return null. And there we are. Okay, so that's us now done the three kind of basic classes. Well, I would say 2.5 out of the 5 kind of classes we have to do. So next time we're going to go back into our custom chest, and we're going to say that when the chest is broken, we want to drop all items on the floor, similar to what a chest does. Then after that, we want to go and we're going to create our container. So the container is the thing that adds all the slots, so that when you mouse over a slot it lights up and it fits all the slots into the right place. This is the thing that puts the kind of functionality onto the GUI in the background and makes it look like it's a complete interactive thing with the background. And then the last thing we need to do, well, the second last thing we need to do is create a tile entity, and that's quite a long class, and that defines all the kind of what happens when you decrease the stack size and everything like that, all the inventory. So it's basically the inventory for the chest. And then we're going to go and we're going to register all our stuff in our tutorial class, the main mod class, and everything should come together and we should have a custom chest. So I hope this has been clear enough. If anything's not clear yet, as always, just pop a question in the comments and I'll try my best to answer it. Yeah, and we should be good for making the rest of the chest next time. So I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.